Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the show. I'm Joe, and this is honestly the best part of my every week. Today, we are in for something absolutely special as we spend time with an incredible leader from the Valley. Joining us from sunny Phoenix, Arizona is Dr. Amy Diaz, president of Gateway Community College. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with
Wonderful.
my bottle of water.
There it is. Yeah, just in case that's always the interview trick, isn't it? Bring the bottle of water. And before I answer that, let me just take a sip, which gives you that space. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I hope people are creating a little bit of space right now, because there's so many important things I think we can discuss, some highlights to model as well. But before we get into that, I got to call out something right out of the gates. Right out of the gates. Your heart bleeds navy and orange, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does.
A diehard Bears fan. Let me ask you, no, really, how are you doing?
Well, football is almost over, and the Bears season was over after maybe the second or third week in my mind. So I'm looking forward to August and, camp and bring on the new schedule
All
and
that,
the new
all
year.
that.
Yeah.
How many times do you actually have to remind people of the '85 team? Like, "Hey, wait a second."
Pretty regularly. And
And
that's getting farther and farther away, right?
yes, yes. Well, you're a bulldog. You're fierce. You're a fighter, and that's some of the stuff that I wanna unpack here, today. Let's talk about your leadership journey. I know there's something fascinating about your journey that I don't always see in the office of the president. Oftentimes, it's kind of a linear approach where you're coming from administrative services, that line, or the
Yeah.
academic line, that channel, or the student affairs channel. But you've had a nice array of experiences in both the academic side and the student affairs side. So, how has that played to your advantage in leading from where you're at right now?
Well, it's a great topic because I think it is somewhat unique, although people might be interested in figuring out how to broaden their knowledge and scope and impact in higher education. And as you stated, that very first job you take in higher ed tends to almost dictate the pathway that you're on.
Right.
So I spent almost 22 years in student affairs, had lots of different positions in student affairs, left one community college in Illinois as the vice president of student development. That was my last position there. And realized that in order for me to sort of remain excited and fresh, I really needed to figure out how to reinvent myself in higher education because I was burned out.
Mm.
I had come to that point, wasn't ready to be done working, but was burned out doing really the majority of the student affairs work that I
Let me
had loved.
pause right there to also talk about how unique that is, because, I mean, Midwest gal, right? Work ethic, you don't burn out, you buckle down. You buckle down, you put your nose down, and you keep grinding through it, but that's not always the most healthy posture. You took a pause and became really self-aware and self-managed to say, "Hmm, let me think about this. Let me think about." That's not what every leader does in those situations.
No, and I guess I feel badly for people who don't have a chance to do that or might not recognize when they could do that. And I had some reasons that were both personal and professional that allowed me to reevaluate number one whether I was going to stay in higher education. I felt maybe that I was that burned out, that maybe staying in higher education wasn't the right thing. But that was short-lived. That thinking was short-lived because I realized right away that that's where my passion is, that's where
Mm.
my heart is, and really serving students and serving the community is is part of the fabric of who I am as a person. And so I wanted to continue to do that, but really thought the best of me was not going to be leading student affairs anymore, that I needed to figure out how to reinvent myself. And I had been fortunate in my positions in Illinois to have just the right combination of things that straddled both student affairs and academic affairs divisions, the way they're typically organized. And so I was able to apply and secure a position here in the Maricopa system, specifically at Gateway Community College, as a dean of liberal arts, sciences, and learning support. And so I had, my background is in teaching math. I had a master's degree in counseling. I have a doctorate in educational psychology. And so that social services area, social and behavioral sciences area in academic affairs fit well. I had enough of the learning assessment,
Right.
doing a learning outcomes assessment in the job I had before, that I was able to transfer my skills into a dean position. But I did intentionally take a step back, right?
Mhm.
Because I went from a VP to a dean, but in another division of the college, which made sense to me because I knew I had a lot to learn because I
That's
hadn't
another
yet.
gulper. I think we ought to just take a pause and go not only self-aware to go, this is a purpose issue right now. I might not have been running as fast as I needed to be to work and maybe running home faster. Just maybe a little bit off purpose and listening to that. But then having the courage to be able to go, maybe this isn't a ladder, rather a lattice. Rather a lattice to say, what other experiences might I give myself to continue to grow and stretch myself towards what it is ultimately that I want to achieve? Kudos. Kudos.
Right, and I have the perspective now that I can look back and see that those were the things that I did, even if in the moment I may have myself have been confused about what I was trying to do. But I recognized that I had a lot to learn in leading in academic affairs within that division. And some of those skills are transferable, right? Leading people, understanding the mission, working through advocating for what you know you need to advocate for because it's what's right. Those skills are transferable in any area of the college, I think. But specifically to go from student affairs to academic affairs, where you're leading what is really the core business of the community college mission, teaching and learning, was where I recognized I've got some bandwidth here that I need to strengthen, and I need to figure out how to learn about leading in academic affairs. Ended up where Gateway was just the right place to, they kind of just put their arms around me and helped me lead and helped me learn how to lead here. I've worked for some amazing people. The vice president at the time, Dr. Maria Weiss, was a great mentor to me in this academic affairs space specifically. And of course, at the time, it was Dr. Stephen Gonzalez working as the president, and he's just been a phenomenal leader. And it was a great place for me to try some things, to take some
Mhm.
risks, to bring some things with me from Illinois to put in place here. And it's just been a great journey for me.
Well, I want to back up to just the fact that in the book of transitioning into an organization like a superstar, you always want to follow kind of a lousy leader. I mean, that's always best practice to make you shine a little bit brighter,
Right.
but that
Right.
that wasn't your story. You have followed one of the greats, Dr. Stephen, Gonzalez, who in many ways could, be known as the kind of the person that has created the DNA of what Gateway is today. You can lead from anywhere. You hear it all the
Yes.
time, don't you? That
Yes. And it's
that's a
it's
Dr. G statement.
everyone's
So how did you
absolutely.
pull that off? How did you pull off leading in the footsteps of somebody that was so renowned?
Well, I think it's two things really. One of them is that depth and breadth of experiences because I had the student affairs experience in Illinois for so long. And then I had a few years leading in academic affairs here at Gateway. Um, and so I think being able to see the whole college, even though I'd only led in two areas of the college, but I could see the whole college and recognized, I think, by watching what Stephen did and listening to him and just being able to have really interesting in-depth conversations with him about how he sees the mission of the community college. It helped me to recognize that as the president, you are the advocate for the entire college. You're not advocating for one division anymore. You're not advocating for just a slice of what we do. You're advocating for everyone, even when you might have parts of your college that are in conflict with one another, right? Or in order to make this decision, you have to say no to this decision, or
Right.
those kinds of things. But really, it's in how you recognize the overall needs that we have and how you interact with people and how you listen to them and how you bring them in. And even if you're delivering an answer that they don't want to hear.
Right.
It's how you do that, right?
Mm.
It's
The
really in
art and
that.
science, if you will. I
It
mean, we
is.
learn more the science, don't we, in our graduate smart classes, but we don't always learn the things in the classrooms that are modeled, oftentimes modeled and caught, right? In most often the most important learnings in a
Yes.
successful leader.
Yes.
So,
So I think the fact that I got to work with him is part of the reason why coming here and then being able to be the president, the next permanent president after he served in that role for several years, it was more seamless than you would imagine, right? Like leading after a really great leader can be super intimidating and it can make you feel like, do I have to do everything the same way he was doing it in order for the growth and the prosperity to continue? And I think the answer is no, with a side note of trying to lean into the things that he was doing that are naturally a part of who I am as a leader
right.
that made sense to continue.
Mm.
Right. So it's continue some of the really good things and then add my own personality and my own thoughts and ideas into building on what was already really very good.
Yes. And the thing that you I think, brought into that equation was just a very healthy individual. Healthy
Try to be.
people, right? Healthy people become healthy leaders and then build healthy teams. And I've watched you for a while. I've watched you wearing an interim badge for a bit, and you were a very healthy leader that wasn't leading off of your back foot, as many interims might feel that they need to. You've made some gutsy moves during that time as a true leader. I'm curious to know, because you're focused, high energy, all of that is, you've got to equip yourself to do that. You're filled with joy. I mean, it just, people see you as somebody that is just a joyful person. What are some of your just daily routines? Share some of your secrets of how do you prepare both the mind and the heart for the work that must be done at Gateway?
Those are great questions too. And you and I have had some dialogues about this, but for me, it starts with the physical part of the job in some ways. I have an exercise regime that, some people really, they get up in the morning and they run and they do their things in the morning. I do exercise, but I exercise at the end of the day. I exercise regularly. I feel like physical movement for me is part of clearing my mind and almost recharging in a way that allows me to bring my best self to the next day.
Hmm,
But
interesting.
physically, I feel good, right? So if you don't feel good physically, it's hard to bring a mental attitude that's positive and to bring an open heart and all of those things. So I think it starts for me with the physical part. I need to feel good. I need to just feel good. And that
Would it be safe to assume that what you do in the evenings or after work actually helps to also prepare you for the morning work, even
it
though some would argue it's probably better to do it before.
It absolutely does, and it's only because I am re-energized in the evening,
Yeah,
and so I'm a night person, right? And I get up in the morning, and I get going right away in the morning, but it's because I've slept longer than some people have later in the morning because I tend to stay up later than people normally do.
right.
So I get re-energized between 9 and 11 at night. And I'm preparing for my next day at that time too. I'm thinking through maybe even the whole next week. What do I have going on? Where have I maybe not spent enough time thinking about my approach to something? And so I try to carve that out either, in the evening, but I try to carve it out for the next day. Um, so I think recognizing if I've eaten or not, making sure I have some nutritious food to eat, um, the physicality of the job,
Mhm.
but making sure my calendar allows for some time to prepare for something that might be a really important or a really difficult or challenging conversation or meeting, that I'm not just running from one thing to the next thing with no time to get a little bit of a mental reset because the numbers of things that we might do, that anyone might do
Right.
in the course of a day, seems to only be growing in some ways, but it's that transition time. And the fact that we're just clicking a button, we're clicking from one meeting to the next sometimes. We're not even physically getting up and walking to the next meeting all of the time, where I might have used that time for my mental reset too, along with my physical walk from one place to the next. If it's back to back to back remote
Mm,
meetings, I do have to create that little bit of time and space to almost reset my mind and think, okay, who's the next group I'm working with? What are some of the challenges? Do I start with something fun and light just to
yep.
set the mood for the meeting, or is
So
this a group of people who want to just get down to business and we just jump in?
well, there is it's not a secret. I think science backs every single one of those morsels up. Just getting out and moving, having a regular physical routine. It does a body good in preparation for the things you need to do. Eating every once in a while, that's not all
It
bad either.
helps.
It does help. But also, I think that last piece is telling your calendar what it must do for yourself to have the capacity to do what you have to do. There are a lot of maybe even smarter than the two of us put together leaders out there that don't have the capacity anymore, and
Right.
therefore, the calendar always wins. The back to back to back to back to back doesn't allow you to be as brilliant as you should show up to be. So,
Well, and
what do you got there?
I
What do you
also
got?
do some writing, right? So some people journal.
Oh,
I don't journal as much as I do write down some thoughts that I don't have time to think about in depth at the moment. And maybe that's technically journaling, but I don't do it regularly enough to probably technically be called someone who journals. But I do always have something with me that I write in. And because sometimes it's even what someone else says, right? Someone else in a meeting might say something really profound. And I think, I've got to take some time to think through that and look into that. And or people sometimes share what books they're reading and those kinds of things. And I always want to write those down and go back and figure out if I'm gonna buy it or get it on audio or what I'm going to do to learn about the book that someone might mention. So I think those are
love those
those are things
disciplines.
that just help you to
Love those
stay
disciplines. If you
focused.
want to be noteworthy, and you are, take a lot of notes. It's that simple.
Right,
It's that
right.
simple. Okay, let's talk about Gateway briefly. I wish we had a ton more time, but when you walk around campus, like you've already done today, I'm sure, what makes you most proud? That smile, the beautiful smile that you have, what is making that happen at Gateway? That under your leadership, you are just seeing things like before and after, like, and maybe even during. What's going on at Gateway
Yeah.
that is just making you smile, boss?
Well, lots of good stuff always, but I think it's seeing as many students as we have back on campus. Even since the pandemic, I know colleges and universities are still kind of struggling with what kinds of services to provide to students. Um, are they in person? Are they remote? How do we keep people engaged with each other? But when I walk around Gateway's campus, I see people. I see people doing things. I see them engaging in teaching and learning. We have thriving programs in nursing and healthcare, all varieties of healthcare, where we are literally bringing students on campus to learn what they need to learn to be able to go out and change their own lives, the trajectory of their own lives through these really awesome careers that they've selected. But we also have students who are coming here to find, I think, a little bit of a reprieve. They're studying in the library, they're going to the learning center, they're going to the counseling center. Just yesterday, we had an unveiling of the brand new 5 C's. So we use positive psychology, and the 5 C's of positive psychology is our values here at Gateway. And we have the 5 C's Success Center, that the counseling center is really the backbone of that particular group. The counseling faculty and the team there are the backbone of that group. Students are coming in on their lunch hour to use that as a place to just reset and focus and have a little bit of fun, maybe do a little bit of stress relief, and then go back over to their studies. And as you know, we have an early college high school on
Right.
this campus, and they've been back since they were allowed to be back with the edict of being back in person several years ago now. But those students are amazing. They're engaged in anything we offer them to do. They're doing excellent work. We're back to having them be dually enrolled, and they're taking their college courses while they're in high school. So that it's just more of the same. It's more of the goodness of what I think a college like Gateway Community College brings to the community in terms of both online learning and in-person learning, meeting students where they are, offering in-person engagement opportunities, but also online engagement opportunities. So we want to make sure
There's
that
something
all
for
of our
everyone.
students, yep,
There's
all of our students
something
find
for
what they
everyone.
need to find here.
And student life is at the very center of the core. I've seen your mission statement. I've looked at the most important words on your walls and everything. Ev it's adjacent, and not adjacent, it's actually centered on the student experience. We've got a lot of leaders tuning in from across the country, and they're all working to close gaps and lift heavy things in a really, another very hard season. What piece of advice, what wisdom, what encouragement would you give our friends in the business of transformation today, Dr. Amy?
Yeah, I think it's just to keep doing the good work and recognize that, you know, throughout throughout the history of community colleges, there have always been challenges. There are always barriers, but I think we, as a system of leaders, we know who our people are, and we can lean on each other to be frustrated in the moments we need to be frustrated, maybe in private, so that we can present the best versions of ourselves to our colleges, and really just listen to people. That's what I find to be
Mm.
the best thing we can do right now is to take time to just listen to the people who might be struggling the most and have that empathetic ear. And sometimes they have ideas that are really, really good ideas to help lessen the burden on someone else. And so where we can make those changes and lean into that work, we should do it.
So good. I was on a campus yesterday, out east, and the president's office had another office connected to it. And I said, "What is that for?" And the president of that institution said, "That's my listening room," to your
Ooh,
point.
love it. I might
But
need to
that's so
create one.
powerful. So powerful. And it was the best part of the office too, so it was very inviting, very welcoming. Wow. Amy, thank you. You've shown us just a little bit of the tip of all things that are good and productive happening at Gateway. In your they are modeling a very, very impressive way, so folks, keep them on the watch. This has been the show reminding you that everyone deserves to be served by healthy leaders like this amazing human that we have on the show today, who are building healthy teams and leading highly reliable systems. Hey, before we wrap up, if today's show kind of resonated with you, do what all the kids do, hit all the right buttons and that kind of thing. Right? Leave a comment. Just share your love with what's happening at Gateway, and the amazing presence that Dr. Amy brings to that campus. So until next time, this is Dr. Joe on purpose to cancel any and all things average. Right? Cancel average. There it is.